Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars Rebels episode review. This one's going to be for Season 3, Episode 11, Visions and Voices. Two key points to say about this episode, kind of straight off the bat, just to kind of give you an idea of my overall thoughts on the episode. First one is that one really good episode, definitely one of the best of the entire series. The second point though is that this episode could have been even better if it had kind of any support from any of the previous episodes. And what I mean by that is that this episode realistically could have been placed as episode like 4 or 5 within this season. Following the last Darth Maul episode, maybe after 1 or 2 episodes, just in between. But since we've had basically half of the season between then and now, this episode just feels like it was super sudden, let's start this plot again. The biggest, I think, culprit of this is the whole, all of a sudden now Ezra is hearing voices from Maul and seeing visions of him. Why could you not have set that up in any of the episodes before this? In any of the last like 4, 5, 6 episodes where Maul, that plot hasn't really been around. Why haven't you had Ezra deal with some of that in the background? Because that would have been really cool to finally get the reveal in this episode about what those visions and voices actually are referring to. Rather than it just being one episode, we entered the episode, Ezra's dealing with this, let's set this up, deal with it, and resolve it all in one episode. This show just doesn't seem to have a great sense of setup, continuous plot, or anything like that. And I think it's really becoming a frustration now with the show, for me at least, in that most of the episodes aren't particularly important. And it's only like this is like the first time we've referenced the plot in so many episodes. As I said, it just makes me a little fearful, given the amazing setup that this episode did have for the second half of the season, that that setup is for the finale. It's not for the second half of the season. That is for like the last 2 or 3 episodes of the season, not the next, 6, 7, 8. And I think that's always been the problem with this show, and I think it's a problem with Western animation in general, is that they don't feel that they can have a continuous plot within a like 20, 26 episode season, because for whatever reason they don't feel people can concentrate on a plot if it's continuous between episodes or what. But it always is a case of only ever doing anything of note in a mid-season finale or a finale, and I really am growing tired of that format with shows like this, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon, and stuff like that. I think you can make the show so much better just by not having everything happen in the finales, because there's enough here to do stuff of note in every episode. Without obviously overloading the series in terms of everything has to be big. I'm just saying, like, instead of having like 6 average episodes and then a really good episode, why don't you have maybe 6 good episodes and then 1 very good episode? It's the gulf between what is really good in this series versus what's not so great is huge, where it should be much more even. So let's get into the episode itself. As I said, I really did enjoy it, and I think it has set up, at least as I said, the finale to be really good. And that is obviously the fact that we're back to Maul. And outside of the fact that it came across quite quickly, I liked the setup, that he's basically become completely distracted by the fact that he has these visions of Maul. It's kind of almost like knocking him out and stuff like that. And they just decide that they have to deal with this. They go to Bendu and they immediately encounter Maul. And I actually like the reveal about why this connection is actually in place, in that the last event, last time we saw them really together, was obviously they were doing the thing where they opened the Sith and Jedi holocron at the same time. They kind of connected and asked the question and saw a little bit of their answers, but Ezra broke the connection before that happened. And the idea here is that because he broke the connection, what happened was that like Maul got half of his answer plus half of Ezra's answer, and then Ezra got half of Maul's and half of his own. And so what they need to do is basically come together, find a way to merge their minds so they can basically get the full scope of what the answer was meant for them. And what ends up happening is that Maul is basically so driven by the fact that he wants to accomplish his goal, which we as the audience know is to track down Obi-Wan Kenobi. Um, and he knows that his answer has something to do with Obi-Wan, but he doesn't know exactly what his half of the answer means. He's actually willing to work with them and make a relatively fair deal, but obviously still coming across like a villain. And so we have the whole idea of like Kanan gets Sabine to plant a tracker on Ezra, as Ezra goes off with Maul to Dathomir to use Night Sister magic to merge their minds. I really like the reference, the atmosphere when they arrive at that planet, because obviously through the Clone Wars, Maul is such a deep character at this stage, given how much we know about him. And Ezra obviously learning about this, the little setup as you go through the episode that, oh look, there's the Darksaber. Here's a setup of something with Ezra and Sabine. Why don't you ask your Mandalorian friend about that lightsaber? And then at the end of the episode, obviously Sabine takes the Darksaber. No reference of the fact of like Kanan or Ezra seeing her take it. She just takes it and seems to almost keep it a secret. That she knows what this is and is taking it not just because it was on the ground, but for some other reason. And stuff like that kind of highlights that when this show really goes for it, it can write stuff really well that sets stuff up that is meaningful. And obviously they've set up some sort of an issue potentially between Ezra's Sabine and Kanan over this lightsaber. I assume it's probably due to the fact that the Mandalorians would have killed Jedi to get the weapon in the first place, and this dark aspect of Sabine's kind of history, where she comes from. But I don't obviously see where the connection is, because they know that Sabine, while yes, is a Mandalorian, at least as far as we know, hasn't killed any Jedi, or like doesn't have any involvement in that actually happening. And so that being a plot point doesn't make much sense to me, unless there is some bigger issue going on with regards to Sabine and Mandalore, and what's going on with this whole idea of her mother looking for her. And I think it overall does connect into probably some sort of bigger backstory for Sabine. So her as a character who is in incredible need of development. I think this has done kind of wonders for her character, just in terms of speculating about what's going on here. That like this is more than just her having this secret weapon that she can use every so often, that if she's in a tough spot she can just break out the Darksaber. There's something meaningful to this, and I think that's very interesting thinking about going forward. I just hope they really get it right how they actually go about presenting this story to us, and actually do it well. But going back to the Maul and Ezra stuff, after exploring Dathomir for a bit, they come to the altar. Maul basically activates the spell, which is just that they have to drink this special potion that he made, and that connects their minds again. Their eyes glow the green color of the Night Sister magics, and their minds connect, and that basically is it. They both know the side of each other is kind of what they're talking about. And I suppose through this, and through Darth Maul finally figuring it out, he does reveal to Ezra that he is after Obi-Wan, and Ezra's vision also is that he sees that Obi-Wan is somehow related to how the Sith are going to be destroyed. So I like that in the end, the question that Ezra and Maul asked ultimately is both the same thing. What Maul wants revenge against is Obi-Wan, and the answer to helping to destroy the Sith is Obi-Wan. So it just instantly creates this point that everyone's going to come to Tatooine at the end of the season, I assume. And that is fascinating, because ever since like the Obi-Wan connection with the first episode of the show, and obviously the important connection of Kanan to Obi-Wan, and that Kanan was the one who gave Obi-Wan the whole idea to reverse the Jedi signal like that to call everyone home, and actually use that as a way to tell everyone to flee if something bad happens. So there's that connection. Obviously Ezra knows about Obi-Wan because he listened to the holocron in the first episode or something like that. So Obi-Wan is basically a character we know from the first episode, of course, and we obviously know from the entire series, but in terms of Rebels, they've kind of stayed away from him, but now it seems like they're building towards something big with Obi-Wan at the end of the season. And because Obi-Wan's my favourite character, that instantly has me super excited to see how they go about using him. Will it just be a finale thing where he shows up and they do something with him and then immediately move away? Or will they meet him or come into contact with him? Will he be a character earlier on towards the kind of second half of the season, and then they'll build to something big at the end? I'm not entirely sure, but I think the main thing they need to accomplish is to finally end the Obi-Wan Maul, rivalry to some degree. I just hope that our new characters don't interfere with it all that much, because I'd be really annoyed if it ends up being this thing where like we get down to Obi-Wan versus Maul, and then it's like Kanan and Ezra who are ultimately the ones to defeat Maul. I think that would take away a lot from kind of what that whole setup has been about. I think it kind of has to come down to Maul, Obi-Wan, and then after that is when you can do really interesting things with the fact that Obi-Wan and Kanan have met before. What does Obi-Wan feel about Kanan now, Ezra now, and the rebellion now that he's potentially going to find out about it? And this is also, I suppose, setting up the idea that this is the rebellion coming back into contact with Obi-Wan, and potentially why they then know to kind of, get word to him about whatever's happening, obviously, at the start of A New Hope, and the message that Leia sends, that they kind of distress call, and that they kind of roughly, they decide that, okay, he's out there, let's contact him to get him involved. So, to me, there could be some really big stuff towards the end of the season, all because of what this episode has set up. And then even then, the fact that Sabine and Ezra follow, and you get them be the ones that kind of, I suppose, pay the debt of the cost of this spell, where the spirits of the Night Sisters come out of the altar and possess Sabine and Ezra. That added an interesting kind of fighting section of the episode, as obviously Maul, you see, is kind of very kind of terrified of the kind of magics fundamentally. He doesn't want to be touched by this at all. And he kind of leaves right towards the end of the episode. He just is like, okay, Ezra's not going to follow me. I'm off, because I know what I need now to go after Obi-Wan. And he just leaves them there. And I kind of like that there was no huge Maul betrayal in this episode, that he doesn't need to betray someone in every episode that he's in. And it meant that it was just like, oh, Ezra is going to have to get Sabine and Ezra out of this situation while also protecting himself. And I like the little conflict with Sabine as he fought her with the Darksaber and then force pushed her out, saved her, went back in and kind of tricked them into going out of Kanan and then destroying their altar once they were out of Kanan, just before they were going to transfer into him. It was a little quick resolution for like, oh, the Night Sisters come back and you immediately kind of destroyed them, potentially for good, but I think the reference overall was good. It added something important and an interesting related threat to the series in that, like, they're characters we know about. We know the threat that they can be if they are allowed to come back, so dealing with them here was actually really well done, especially given that it was a Maul-centric episode as well. But yeah, that's kind of where we end. As I said, then as they're walking out, Sabine grabs the Darksaber, and we have a few things definitely for sure set up. Tatooine is the goal for like the second half of the season. Everyone knows it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's the key. They're still wondering if he's alive. Maul obviously for sure knows that he's alive, just that, or at least is in no way thinking that he could possibly be dead, that there's no way his revenge can't be taken because Obi-Wan has to be alive. It's definitely going to be an interesting dynamic once we start to see Obi-Wan introduced into the series and see how our characters react to seeing him again. And especially, like, I suppose, Ezra seeing him for the first time. But yeah, I think that's come to the end of the review. As I said, the setup for this episode was very strong, and I overall think it was an interesting plot episode to finally, I suppose, for once, sever that connection between Ezra and Maul and have them now just be separate entities like that. I think, in general, they'll interact again, but I don't think they'll in any way try to do the whole apprentice thing all that much. It's all about, I think, Obi-Wan going forward. Plus the interesting thing of whatever they're planning on doing with Sabine, with the Darksaber, Mandalorians, and her past, her history. I think there's a lot of stuff to kind of think about there. So yeah, overall, really good episode. It's just one of those episodes that always highlights, why can't more episodes within this series be on this level? Why can't we have set up towards the big moments in other episodes? Why do all of the mid-season episodes between the start and the mid-season and then the mid-season and the finale, why do all those middle episodes have to be just random episodes that can basically come at any point, that have no importance? I hope they fix that in the second half of the season and actually have some build up towards the finale. Because I'm going to be a little bit frustrated once again if the finale is literally just, we have coordinates for Tatooine, let's go. And there was no build up in the other episodes towards it. It was just this episode and then the finale happens, and that's the plot. The plot is like the premiere, the mid-season, and the finale, and then everything else, like all other like 16, 18 episodes of the season, are just random episodes. That's what the format that the show doesn't need. But I'm just going to end it there. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. And I'll just end by saying links to my Twitter and Tumblr are in the description if you want to follow me on social media. And links to my Patreon campaign and my PayPal donation link are also in the description if you want to help support my channel. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.